Leave the World Behind. This is the second part of the analysis that I'm doing on the channel. And we'll do a little review of the first part, but then we're going to dig into the second part of the film, or second, yeah, they're called parts, but like chapters, okay? And we're going to get into that today. That one's called The Curve. So what is the film about? So what we already saw in the previous video, this is the new Donnie Darko, a new Donnie Darko film, where you have a primary universe exiting the primary universe, so you enter into an unstable tangent universe. That's the world that Donnie had to save. And then, or at the end of it, had to, in the collapsing of that tangent universe, had to save the world. And then, at the end of the unstable tangent universe, which can only endure for a short time, there's the chance of, the world ending when it collapses into a black hole or whatever. Okay, and but the story basically is you have a primary universe, and then you exit the primary universe, enter into this unstable world, and the instability has to come to an end at some point. And when it does, you either navigate it carefully and exit it carefully and safely and save the day, or the unstable tangent universe spins out of control and destroys everything at the end. And so that's what you have in Donnie Darko, and that's what you have in this film too, where you go from 2016 is where the exit from the primary universe happens at the election, November 2016, and then we enter the unstable tangent universe when this bizarre situation happens, and Donald Trump, Donnie Darko, is, having his day. He's president for 4 years, then ousted in a way that was very controversial in the 2020 election. Now, after this alleged insurrection and the indictments and all of this stuff, he's being thrown off ballots and everything, right? But he's running for office again, and we have an election coming up that very similar to November 2016. You have Trump as the challenger against a Democrat who, this case is an incumbent. In the previous case, wasn't an incumbent, but he was running for office when a Democrat held office. So Obama was finishing up his second term. Either way, point being, we have a similarity. And what we're doing here is we're going back to the initial November 2016 election, in a sense. We're having a redo. This is when it comes back and collapses back on itself, and we get to repeat. And at this point, it has to be done right. In Donnie Darko, what did Donnie have to do? In the movie Donnie Darko had to die. He had to end. He had to disappear. That was the way to save the world in that film, and Donnie Darko did it. In this timeline, it doesn't look like Trump's plan is to, exit peacefully and come to an end and just walk away if he loses. There's going to be a battle afterwards. He's not going to give in. He's not going to sacrifice himself, is the idea. And so we're going to get the problems that come after it, which is what Leave the World Behind is all about. So we see this, right? There's the house, part one, and it was the White House. If you look, it's a White House. Owners, the black man and his family. But at 11/2016, on a Donnie Darko-like clock, just like in the film Donnie Darko, the midnight, here's where you enter the tangent universe, when the white couple occupies the black family's home, the White House, at 11/16. Then they go to the beach, and the White Lion, which is an oil tanker, crashes onto the beach, grounds. And yet the White Lion's name comes from the first ship that brought African captive slaves to the United States in the year 1619. And so this marked the beginning of black slavery in the United States. Race-based slavery is the claim. Okay, historically, and so this is very symbolic. When when MAGA takes office, it's like we return to this world in which slavery comes back again. Okay, then at night, just to drive home this slave ship theme, George and his daughter Ruth show up and they say, "This is our house." And the house itself symbolizes a ship, and the names here are, name is very important. George Scott is the name of the captain of the 1730, June 6th, 1730, the short ship, the Little George, which on June 6th, 1730, experienced a revolt where the 96, notice, 96 on her shoulder, the 96 African-held captives on the slave ship revolted, took over the ship, took it back to Africa, and, disappeared on the continent and survived and escaped slavery, right? And this house symbolizes a ship, and his name is Captain George Scott because he's the captain of this house. He owns it in the film. And so this is why if you're on the upper deck, you have waves, and it's like you have a view of the sea. You're over top. But if you're in the lower deck, it has the wood aesthetic, like you're inside the lower deck or whatever of the ship. Okay, and so the black family has to go down here, and he sleeps on the floor while she sleeps up here under this map, which we'll talk. It's called the American map of Attica or something. I forgot the exact name, but I'll show it to you when I get to that slide. But this is a map of violent, oppressive actions and war and these sorts of things that the Americans are guilty of throughout its entire history. And it's incomplete, and yet it's full, right? It's to show how bad it has become or has been all along since the beginning. But they're being put down in the basement in their own home, even though he's the captain, while they're up top. Okay, and then that night at 11:16 again. Okay, we have Clay and Amanda playing Jenga, which is very symbolic because the Jenga tower will collapse. See, after the next 11/16, which is the November 2024 election, you get the collapse of the world, right? The end of the world. And so that after this point, they're playing Jenga, and that's when George and Ruth show up. They enter the house, and while they're talking, we get this alert. Okay, the national alert, warning effective immediately, emergency broadcast system, and emergency warning here. And they go over and look at the channels, and the first channel is 10:04, and I think this is a cue that we're supposed to look at these as dates. 10:04 was in 2023, the FEMA and FCC planned nationwide emergency alert test for October 4th, 10:04. That happened just this year. Okay, messages will be sent to all TVs, radios, and cell phones. And then we get 11:04 and 11:06. That's next year, I think, just before the election, just after the election. Election is 11/5, November 5th. And I think the 12:02 could be pointing to the year. Okay, could be pointing to the year of 2024, right? Because 12 2 times 24, 2 times 12, right? That's possibly, or is it December 2nd? Maybe something happens then. I don't know. I'm not going to make any promises. This is speculative. But this is the sequence of channels that they look at. We get the emergency broadcast warning. And the one is 10:04. And I think it's very plausible that the idea is it's pointing to next year's election, or this year's election. It's 2024. This is my first video of the year. January 2nd while I'm recording. And so that's what we have. And then you get the collapse after that. So I think the first day of their stay in this film at this home already gives the whole outline of the Donnie Darko story. Okay? What is it? It's Enter Tangent Universe, 2016, November, with that election. That's when the MAGA situation began. Trump became president and occupied the White House, which was never his house anyways, is how they're viewing it. He brought in, allegedly, this period of oppression, almost like we're reverting back to the old slave days. The house represents this slave ship. They're like the slave owners or the traders, and the people who have the right to the house are put down in the basement like slaves, but they're going to revolt. That's why we have the revolt symbolism. Okay, they're not beating at the door in order to just visit and go back there. This is related to a blackout, which may even have racial connotations here, with the idea of that there are race protests that have been called blackouts in the last few years. You can look that up. Okay, and then you get to the next election, right around here, this date range, and then subsequently after it, you get the collapse of the United States. Okay, so that would be the outline. And so here it is: primary universe, exit, enter unstable tangent universe. Next November, we go back and try to save the day, but instead of saving the day, the tower collapses. Okay, but that's sort of a synopsis we get at the first day. Then the whole story is a larger version of the same thing, where we have the 1116, we get the spiral barometer scene, and we've talked about that before. Then it goes on to the very end of the film, where again the clock is at 1116 right here, and she's going to walk up and make a decision. She has to go straight or turn to the right. Remember, she's the Donnie Darko type character in this film. Ruth says, and the little girl, I forgot the exact phrase, language, and the little girl stares off into nowhere like Donnie Darko, okay, in the film. So we get another Donnie Darko reference there. And she, if she's representing sort of Donnie, okay, in the like Donnie Darko, she, when she has a chance to go straight or turn right, she looks both ways and she turns down the hall to the bunker. And she closes herself up in a bunker where it looks like she's going to survive watching Friends, okay, with all these supplies down there. Wow, there's a warning on the screen that says, seek immediate shelter, everybody, because they're detecting radiation levels in cities, right? So seems like things have gotten really, really bad. We also get the impression that they don't make it back. Anybody else? At least that's what I think. I don't think we're supposed to think, oh, they're going to go up to the house and get in. I don't get that impression, and I'll explain why later. Okay, but knocking at the door at night is not a good thing. Not supposed to be interpreted as a. Well, I'm gonna forget that. But it is not here in the opening lyrics of the song. The lyrics of it. The Revenge. Heard they was sleeping again, say it no more. This is a rude awakening. Kick in the door. Back, and I'm badder than ever before. Don't get it mistaken. I'm ready for war. You're not supposed to miss the point of this scene here. As friendly as they come across in the film, the symbolism here, as you can tell, is slave owners, oppressed, revolting, Captain George Scott and the 96. The White Lion arrived, but not for peace, not to be slaves, but to resist. Okay, and that's why that map down in the basement also has a lot about revolution and revolt. We'll talk about it. Okay, but anyways, so on the way, remember we saw the Point Comfort. That's where the White Lion arrived in 1619. Fort Mose, I skipped this in the previous one. I should have looked at it. Commenters pointed this out. Very good. Thank you. Fort Mose is it's a place where you had one of the earliest, or the earliest, free black community or something like that in the colonies. And so they had a chance to go straight to Fort Mose, but instead took the path to Point Comfort, which is very symbolic. Okay. And so we get to the end of that first part, and we arrive here at the curve. At the end of the first part, we saw this cyber attack across the country. There's this little QR code or whatever here. I didn't look into it. People have looked into it. You can look into it too. But I should take some time to do that. But the curve is part 2 of the film. It opens like this, which is a mysterious opening because we had a satellite. Why a satellite? Well, it's related to this and what we'll see, it's also related to the curve. Satellites are in predictive programming appear to me to be one of those signs and the final warnings before things get really, really bad. Okay? So if you look at SOS, I have videos on it. SOS, the song, this is by Take That, the band, says, we'll get a 5-minute warning for divine intervention. With the satellites falling, prepare for ascension. Under mind control, we'll be practicing our politics, a political season, defending all our policies, preparing for apocalypse. And then you'll get a 5-second warning for divine intervention, and the satellites are falling, prepare for ascension. So when you start having satellite issues here, you're getting a warning, I think. This song was performed at the Royal Variety Show for Prince George at the time, who's now king. There's a video of it on YouTube, or more than one maybe, and you can take a look at that. But this song is clearly about World War III related issues as well, because if you look at, or major war at least, if you look at their live performance, not the Royal Variety Show, but elsewhere, they have lots of very explicit World War III, or major war symbolism, like that's World War III, because they even have, I think, explosions happening all around the world on different continents and everything. But okay, so but what is this curve, and what is in the satellites? The curve is about being able to see what's coming soon based on reading the patterns now. Okay, he says, a while ago, before all this happened, this is at the end of part 2, but I'm going to put it here at the beginning just so you know where we're headed and what we're supposed to be saying. A while ago, before all this happened, I looked at the market and I knew something was coming. What do you mean? Amanda asks him. In my line of work, you have to understand the patterns that govern the world. You have to learn how to read the curve. Spend as long as I have doing it, it can help you see the future. If it holds steady, it promises harmony. It inches up or down, you know it means something. G-H-Y, why are you telling me this? Did your neighbors say something to you? See, now we're trying to look for the deeper meaning. It's not just about the markets. Maybe there is relevance here with the markets as well. But it's more than just the markets, because he had gone to see his neighbor. She's asking, did your neighbor say something to you? No, but... He says, no, he wasn't home. But he has a satellite phone I thought could help us. I tried to use it. It didn't work even though it had enough juice. Now the whole point of a satellite phone is that you always have a signal, if you have a clear view of the sky, which I did. Only reason why it wouldn't work is if our satellites got knocked out of commission. And she's skeptical. Satellites, yada, yada, yada. Okay. And don't you think you're getting carried away? And he says, I saw a plane nosedive out of the sky into the ocean, and it wasn't the first. Okay? So, the curve. One of the things that this is about is this is the warning signs for what's coming. Okay? And the warning sign could here be generic. It could be something very generic. Like just you should be paying attention to what's happening and honest with yourself. Things are not going to get better. They're getting worse, and all the signs around us. You're supposed to be reading the patterns and the curve. Okay, it's very clear where this is all headed. And I'm right now. I'm not just talking about the film. I'm talking about the real world. We have war with the Middle East. We have Ukraine, Russia. We have China, Taiwan. We have the U.S. and Israel and Iran and the whole Middle East. And okay, the world is in this situation. So we're supposed to read the curve. But beyond just that, we have the markets mentioned in the scene, and we also have satellites and evidence with communications or something that the satellites are either being attacked or sabotaged or whatever. And when you get to that point, you're supposed to know what's coming. And he concludes from this, I no longer think that this is just a couple of teenagers in the Philippines. And just like in SOS, the song, what happens immediately after that? They hear the rumblings and the attack. They hear explosions and then the noise. Okay? The attack is coming It comes immediately. Once, by the time they recognize this, they're also experiencing firsthand this attack by hearing it and the noise breaking a window there, and they can't. You have to cover their ears. Okay, they're in it. He read the curve a little too late, or he was too optimistic, trying to give the best spin of everything on everything. But so that's where we're headed. When we look at the section of the curve, I think it opens with the satellite because it's pointing to possible satellite issues as your final warning that it's imminent. Okay. But anyways, this is also supposed to be depicting a sunrise. And right away, Rose is begging her mom, like she wants to see friends again. And she says, please, let's fix it. And it's vacation. I want to watch this. And her mom just says, go wait in the living room. I'm coming. Dad's still sleeping. When he's up, he'll take care of it or help. Okay. She checks her phone. Notice here, a lot of commenters point this out. This is something that I was aware of, but it is an important thing to pay attention to. Day one, when they showed up, here's where the water was. Lower. Okay? And notice, even at night, when she was going to bed, the water was lower. While they were sleeping, the waters have been stirred up a bit. Okay, so we're getting troubled waters, and it looks like it's a more threatening environment. Okay, things are getting worse. But she's going to look at her phone. She's going to see these notifications. The New York Times, CNN, and MSNBC, the Washington Post. Looks like the notifications began down here, and they go up to the most recent one. So it looks like hackers are behind it. East Coast of the United States reports power failure. Major blackout report on the East Coast. Okay. And these messages are going to disappear quickly. The Washington Post, it's just gibberish. I wonder if we could figure out what that means. There may be something there. In fact, I just think through that, but I'm going to have to look into it. And if somebody else wants to mess around with it and come up with ideas, it'd be interesting to see what we can come up with. But so she looks, tells him. He's like, I don't see anything. It disappeared. So she had to tell him what it was about. He speculates a little bit, and she's just getting annoyed with him. And she's like, are you asking me a question? Are you asking me? How would I know? Why are you being so nonplussed about all of this? Did you forget those people? She's still talking about them like that. Those people are in our house, are still in our house. I trusted you to handle this. Well, he says, I'm going to drive to town, buy a newspaper, find someone who knows more than we do. All right, and I'll take care of this. Meanwhile, she's down here looking outside, recognizes this car. It looks expensive. See her face? She looks a little troubled, like, oh, well, her speculations the night before that I didn't hear a car. Maybe they snuck up on us or whatever, and maybe they're not the owners. Starting to look wrong. Okay, and but she seems to be bothered by this, and so what does she do? She goes and gets her coffee. One of the commenters pointed out in the previous video, it said, I don't know what the coffee is. I'm sure something that it may just be like a comfort drink. Whenever it sort of supports their hope that things are different than they really are. And so she goes and gets a coffee because maybe she's starting to realize that the White House really isn't hers. And that it's theirs. But so she goes and gets her coffee. Last night, these people, she has a hard time explaining it. I'm not going to review that, but Rose is like, what are you even talking about? And at that point, they're going to go check the TV again. Rose is going to take her dad over there. Notice that the painting on the wall has changed at this point overnight, along with the ocean waves, bedroom wallpaper or whatever. And instead of having the up and down arrows or the waves, which may also point to something like 5G or some other type of wave or weapon, you have here, much less clearly I don't know. The white and the black are now mixed up a bit. You also have in here what looks like either a dragon or a I don't know, like a dragon alligator hybrid is what it looks like to me, because if you follow that black line right there, it looks like a reflection. So it's like on water. But you have a eye, a mouth, almost looks like a wing here, right? Tail. But I have no clue what the significance of that be, except that it looks, spooky and scary and unpleasant. I'm not sure. But anyways, so they're going to look at the TV here, and now we get snow, which of course is associated with sort of white noise, related to the other film we've been analyzing recently, which represents death. And he says, I wonder what that means. Notice there on channel 101. Don't know if there's a significance, if that's a 10-1. Yeah, see? No, it's just not working. Here we have a blurred 11.6. That's after the election. And then it's going to switch to 12.2 again, blurred right up there. See it? I'm aware. Can you reboot it or something? Go on the roof? No one's going on the roof. I definitely am not going up to the roof. Okay. He's going to go get rabbit ears, maybe. When he goes to town, he can try to get rabbit ears. And she's like, what would a rabbit's ear help? She doesn't know anything about that because it's before her time. And so she goes outside annoyed, and this is where she sits there and she sees the deer. The deer are encroaching, right? They're approaching and entering land that usually they wouldn't be on, at least not as such a large group. Okay, she's going to go out to take a look at them, and look at all those deer. That's a lot of deer, and that is not normal deer behavior. It's a very large, like a large herd of deer or something, right? And they are coming across aggressive. They're not afraid of her. She's able to approach them. They just sit there and look at her until they finally go. But this is, again, related to the first part, where we had the two deer that were the first deer seen. It was an adult, a mother, a doe, and a fawn, right? And so we had these two deer, and then immediately it transitions to showing George with Ruth, a parent and a child, and showing up. And I think that's pointing to the hunted becoming the hunters, right? They're losing their fear. And I'll show a scene in the shed later on that's very important in relation to this, where Ruth is explicitly, I say explicitly, I believe Ruth is situated to look like a deer who is initially hunted and then finally sort of resists, okay? And I'll show that later, hopefully in this video, but maybe not, maybe in the next one. But anyways, so I think that's what this is pointing to, maybe even the black or minority, or the more generally the left sort of rising up against the right. And at this point, we get a transition, right? Notice that the deer are still in the transition, I believe. And it fades through, and we're going to see upside down this map, because these are the hunted. And we're going to get a revolution from them, and this is a map of revolutions. Okay, and this map, here it is upside down. You can see the United States of Attica. I flipped it over here and tried to make it clear to read. This map of American violence is incomplete. Please write in whatever you find lacking. So it's a map of American violence. Here's what it looks like, the United States of Attica. So I pieced together two screenshots to make it look sort of like the real map, but good news, you can just Google it and find it. And this is what the map actually looks like. Founded by the American people on September 13th, 1971 at Attica Prison, where 42 men gave their lives in a heroic struggle for freedom. Okay, so 42 people died in the Attica prison riot at that time, and that riot was a big deal. Nelson Rockefeller was the governor of New York at the time, and he was not, he negotiated a little, but not much. He ended up sort of, authorizing the correction officers and state and local police to regain control of the prison, and they used violence and killed a lot of people. And basically, the prisoners were claiming that they were treated as beasts up here, had terrible living conditions, no political rights, and all of this. And so what ended up happening is they took people hostage, over half the inmate population, 1,281 of the 2,200 men approximately, were a part of this. And either way, at the end, many were shot systematically, even with their hands up, and so on at the end. You can read this. This was, with the exception of the Indian massacres in the late 19th century, the state police assault, which ended the 4-day prison uprising, was the bloodiest one-day encounter between Americans since the Civil War. So this is a very symbolic. this map being chosen is about the last significant time recently that you had Americans against Americans in a conflict like this, and the map itself lists a huge number of these violent acts. And if you go through it by quarter, here's the Northwest. You can pause and take a look at that, see if you can make out what any of that is. Here's the Northeast. Okay, same thing. You can pause and take a look. You get a little clear out here. The black on green's easier to read. Revolutionary War, Civil War, War of 1812, World War II, Nagasaki Ocean, World War One. A lot of things in here. In the Southwest, we get Fort Sumter. We have Spanish-American War, Mexican War, slavery, 40 million dead, Vietnam, and so on. Casualties listed: Indian Wars till 1900, 900,000 survived, deaths estimated in the millions, and so on. Okay, nuclear strike in Japan, all of that. So it's to show just how bloody the United States is. Okay, and this is what Ruth is sleeping under. That's right above her pillow, and she wakes up startled. You can tell she wakes up startled. There's some noise she hears. It's the shower running in the bathroom. When she recognizes that eases her a little bit. But you can see that she still has a bit of a... she's anxious. She's dealing with anxiety and concern, naturally, given everything going on. And so she goes up, and what does she get? She grabs herself a coffee to calm herself down, like everybody else when they need to calm down. Okay, they have a little conversation. Amanda tells Ruth that she got some notifications, what there are, what the notifications were about. There were two about the blackout, and then something about hackers being behind it. And Ruth is going to, and this comes up repeatedly, Ruth talks about power plants and, potential meltdown, and whether hackers are actually involved in or attacking power plants. We do get language that points to nuclear events in this film several places. One, when Clay says that Archie could sleep through the atom bomb. And later on, Ruth says, could be, the blackout could be a symptom of something like the bomb you said your son would sleep through. We also see at the end of the film that radiation is in the different cities, which is in the warning in the bunker on the screen down there. We also get a potential hint of this in the migration patterns of animals changing when it says the fallout of the cyber attacks. But that language, the fallout, of course, is derived from fallout, nuclear fallout. Now, it could be metaphorical fallout, just sort of the consequences and what follows an attack of this sort. But it may actually be pointing to something that was literally fallout or radiation or something spreading that would cause health problems and perhaps make the animals flee. So I'm not sure, and I'm not even sure how exactly animals would react to this. So what would cause migration patterns to change? I'm not sure. All right. But she says it nearly caused a meltdown. Then they change topics. Is that your daughter out there? She's sweet. How old is she? 13. Let's keep this between the adults. We want them to sort of not get worried because, we don't want them to panic over nothing. She says, I disagree. I don't want to scare anyone, but I disagree with you. Disagree with me about what? I don't think it's nothing. Okay, and it turns out she's right. But Amanda, and just like the other adults, and even Archie, everybody is trying to be optimistic and hope things are better than they really are. And they're just not good. So they have a conversation what they do. And Ruth doesn't do anything yet. She doesn't want to rush into the workforce and be trapped there. Perhaps some sort of hint of trying to avoid slavery. Okay. And in comes, because remember, she represents the 96, the revolt. Okay. In comes George, the captain of the house. Okay. Any news? Phone's still not working. TV's out. Where's Clay? He's out looking, trying to get newspaper. Oh, that's a good idea. He's thinking about himself going over to his neighbors, the Huxleys, to see if there's anything there. He says, unlikely. No one's around. But I'll drive over there anyways and check. He intends to go check the satellite phone to see if there's a way to communicate using the satellite signal. She says, Ruth says, before you go, you might want to hear about the alerts. And they tell her about the blackouts and the hacker, possible hacker explanation. And he says, let's see here. She said, Amanda asks him, do you think there's going to be a meltdown too? He laughs. He's trying to laugh it off and not worry about it. Is that what Ruth told you? Among other horrifying things, yes. Well, obviously, Ruth is being a little paranoid. Aren't you the one who always said, Ruth says, if you're not paranoid by now, it's probably too late. And he knows he's sort of been caught, and he's trying to get away with his optimism, but he's being called out on it. Well, he says, I'm sure this will turn out to be a big nothing. Does it look like he really thinks it's going to be a big nothing? He's going to turn around here, like that love you bug. And he says, is that coffee? Because that's what they do in the film to comfort themselves when they're not comfortable. Okay, so he's going to turn to his fake source of comfort, this hope. He says, I'm sorry. Well, she says, what's the love you bug? It was a computer worm spread throughout the internet back in 2000. People would get an email with the subject line that read, I love you. You clicked on the attachment, it would send it to all your contacts. It crippled businesses and caused billions of dollars in damage. Turns out it's just two teenagers in the Philippines. And you see he doesn't look totally comfortable with this one, not looking. But he's going to not looking at them. Could be just as innocent as that. I think I'll go rush Archie along. And so, see, now you can see what he's thinking here. He's concerned. And then he's going to look over at the cabinet, which is where his gun was, and all the stuff he was just saying was inconsistent with what he internally believes and knows is probably the case. So anyways, we go on. They're going to talk about her mom probably coming anytime now. He's giving her comfort and hope. And she says, you remember when we went to Italy? Now, I wonder if this is something about when the Obamas went to Italy. I think he went twice as president twice as president and maybe afterwards some more times. I'm not sure. There may have been some sort of event there that's being hinted at, but I don't know. Now, Clay, he's out on the road. Now we're going to enter the scene, okay? And it gets chaotic. It's chaotic in the film, and it's hard for me to organize it in a way that's not sort of chaotic here. What we're going to have are 3, sort of 4. Ruth gets in there a little bit too, but it's mostly Clay, in one scene where he's driving around. He's going to run into the woman who speaks Spanish. Then he's going to encounter the drone that's dropping the flyers. He's going to turn away terrified because he doesn't know they're just flyers and try to flee back home and escape this attack. You got that scene. Then you have a separate scene with George going to, let me see, George going to the Huxley's house, okay, which is sort of an encounter with the catastrophes happening outside of their little property. Things are it looks like almost in ruins here, okay? And what you get his experience, and then we're also going to get the Rose and Archie together, their experience. And I think the three things are telling a similar story, okay? And we're supposed to interpret them similarly, okay? So let's go ahead and do our best. There is in the middle a hint of the Civil War coming from Ruth as well. But let's go ahead back to where we were. Okay, here it is. He's heading out. He's trying to get a signal. He can't. 1619, that points to the White Lion slave ship arrival. We've talked about that before. And that's why right after the 1619 we get what? Ruth, turns the key, and we get the 7/4, July 4th key that's going to open and unlock the Civil War room. Okay. Now I say it's I don't know if it's going to be exactly July 4th. I don't know. Could be 4/7 as well. But in the Civil War trailer for this April 2024 released film, the month of the eclipse, we have Western forces will reach the White House on July 4th. Okay. So you may get some hints of this same thing here. But the Civil War, right? This room that she goes into that was locked has a lot of this old, these pictures and so on. Okay, and she's going to sit there and smoke a vape. I don't know. Either vape, smoke, I don't know, something marijuana, I think is the idea. He goes to the Huxleys, can't reach his wife, and we're going to get the gun. He's clearly disturbed. They are going to, he's distracted by the girl, but she is paying attention to what really matters. She's interested in what the deer are communicating. She's like Donnie Darko again, sort of the superhero. She's going to be the one sort of understands the deer. In the Tangent universe, the one that needs to save the world has these sort of special powers. And so everybody else just ignoring the deer, think they're, coming up with normal, naturalistic explanations of them. And she's like, they're trying to tell us something. And it's by following what they're telling her that she ends up in the bunker. Okay, so now we have Clay traveling out. He passes Taney Farms, which could be pointing to the Supreme Court Chief Justice Roger Taney, who wrote the Supreme Court's allegedly, probably or possibly, worst rulings of all time with the Dred Scott ruling saying that black people could not be U.S. citizens. Okay. So possible reference to that. He goes out to try to get a signal on his phone, but while he's there, we get a brief signal from the radio. We're now getting reports that the fallout from the ongoing cyber attack has led to a catastrophic environmental disaster in the South, impacting animal migration patterns. Okay, so that's what I was talking about earlier. And he's just going to keep going. He's lost. George is going to, he's approaching the house now. You see the mess. And she's going to talk about the deer. Archie doesn't care, but she's going to insist, and she's just going to go out there and take a look. So Archie's going to follow her. Okay. She says, I'm going. He says, all right. So you see, we're getting these... The intensity at this point we're still early on in this sequence of these three groups or three scenes developing. They're all just starting to explore. He goes in the house. Hello, anyone home? Let myself in. I can't tell. My eyes aren't that great, and I wasn't paying attention, but it almost looks like you have a sea view here out the windows. It looks very similar to being in the upper deck of the ship, okay, in the other house. And this is a white family's home, it looks like. So again, giving that symbolism. And yet, in this case, the upper deck was destroyed. The wave took it out. Okay, windows broken, fruit scattered, nobody there. Okay, while he's driving, she, the Spanish-speaking woman, runs up trying to get help from him. And we're going to get more about that in just a second. Archie and Rose, meanwhile, are approached. They come out and they find something that sort of surprises them. So now we're getting surprises in each place. They're starting to make discoveries. There's a little shed here. They're going to go look at, explore it. She's just starting to talk. And George is just starting to get an idea how bad things have gotten as well. He's looking around the house. We don't know what's going on here. He checks the satellite phone, gets it, and he's going to check it. But we're getting close to the test. He has the test idea. He's pulling it out. And she's happy briefly that she has a chance, somebody who could help her. He doesn't understand Spanish. He gets no signal. So we're not getting communication here. There's a communication failure. Okay. This place is so boring. Yeah. Okay, he's got his obey. She's got her NASA shirt on, probably communicating something. It even stand like that at some point, so we're supposed to read it like obey NASA. With the satellite attack in the same part, which is very interesting choice of shirts. Okay. This must be where he sleeps, though. Now we're going to get this weird little conversation about where he hides at night. They don't tell you who it is, and it looks like there's somebody who sleeps in there. Okay? And she is going to be disturbed. What I'm going to propose here is that what we're going to get in this section is, I'm not saying it's completely fake, but there's going to be like a disinformation campaign, misinformation, propaganda that's designed to scare, okay, but it's not the real thing. When things get really bad yet, it may be real events along the way, but I don't think that's the climactic stuff. I think it's pointing to fake, because he's going to tell a fictional story about a fictional guy who's not really there and looking out the window, and he's going to scare her. Okay, her fear is from what? Fake, false information. In just a minute, we're going to see Clay is going to be terrified by the drone, which is dropping what? Lies, false information. It's just dropping flyers in Arabic, and apparently in Danny says later in the film, in the West Coast, they were receiving flyers in Korean, and it's explained by George later that this is giving us no good and bad information, so that we really don't know what's going on, so that we turn against each other. Okay? And so we're getting fear from false information. Now, let's keep going. George's going to walk out to the car. Looks like he's getting ready to leave, but then he gets curious, and he's going to go explore what's going on over there. We got the birds, a lot of dead things over there, people. Okay. He's going to head that way, and meanwhile, Clay doesn't understand her. And I'm just going to put a translation that I found on YouTube. Not exactly, actually. It's sort of like it's a mix of mine and theirs. Followed them pretty closely, and then I had to put some things in that they skipped. Anyways, very rough. I don't speak Spanish. Please stop. Hello. Thank God I found someone. I'm trying to get back to my house. I've been lost. I've been walking for a while. Okay, so she's saying things like that. I need to use the phone. You're the first person I've seen all day. We have to get out of here. I just saw a plane that was spraying red gas. Okay, she thinks it's gas. Again, she's confused about what it is. In the surrounding area, I saw some deer come out of the woods, more than 50. So This is the, I think, a symbol of the uprising. Please, I need to go back to my house, mister. The military fled. There is nobody around. It will be a chemical attack. Please, mister, don't leave me here. Now, this could be pointing to a future chemical attack. If it does, that would be like White Noise, where you had the preview of a chemical attack by the Palestine train crash, and then possibly, which has a symptom of deja vu, meaning later on you might get the same thing again on a larger scale, which causes deja vu, makes you remember the initial event. Okay, but maybe that's what it's pointing to, or it could just be the false information that they're both afraid of. See, people are running scared of things that are just inaccurate. She's terrified about the spraying gas. It's not gas, it's just paper, and it's not even telling the truth necessarily. So look, he's got this little window over here, so he's giving his fictional story to scare her about this guy who's going to look out the window and could walk right up to her room. Okay, he is getting confused by her and stressed out, and she needs his help, but he's just going to say sorry and drive away, looking the other way. Really terrible. Again, representing the occupants, the white occupants of the White House, the MAGA type people, as morally weak and not caring for minorities. And again, this confirmation is not just black, white that's being talked about here. Okay, and well, she's starting to get scared. The music's getting more intense. He's approaching this watch. His attention is drawn to the watch. Now, it's interesting because later on we'll see the beach is covered in debris, bodies, and everything, and he doesn't seem to notice until after he looks at the watch, which of course isn't very plausible. So this is symbolically important. He's going to approach that watch in a minute. He is driving along. Here's the buzzing of the plane, the drone. Archie continues to give the scary story to her, and he stops. Okay, Clay stops in the road, and this way he's looking. He's afraid of disinformation, the false information, the lies. Okay, and he's going to, George, GH, is going to approach the watch, and as he does this, he's approaching an eclipse. He's going to go in, see how he comes down, and he's going to eclipse the sun. Here's our eclipse. Okay, there it is. And then he looks down at the stopwatch, not stopwatch, the watch, and it looks like the time is, what time is that? Okay, first off, the watch is stopped. It's not running still. The event, crash, probably happened, I'm guessing, overnight. So let's just say when it stopped with the crash, if that's the case. When did it stop? It stopped, it looks like, about 1 hour after midnight. That was when they would have crashed, maybe, if that's what that is. The time is not 1 o'clock, I don't think. What you're actually looking at is 12:59 and 45 seconds. It's almost 1 o'clock. If it was 1 o'clock and 45 seconds, 1 o'clock, yeah, it would be almost at the 1 minute mark, right? And it's not. It's right at the 12. So we're getting almost 1 hour. We have not come fully to the end of that hour, and that's when this happened. Okay, so, or at least when the watch stopped. And they're showing us something. So what I think they're showing is just about an hour. That's what's being communicated there. Possibly has a reference to after the eclipse, 1 month or 1 unit, or almost, I don't know what the unit would be, until almost the next eclipse, or I don't know, right? So there's different possibilities, but I'll explain later why 1 month for some things seems plausible, and I'll show that from White Noise, Donnie Darko, and Get Out. Okay, but it's speculative at best. But this 1 is almost 1. That's what we're supposed to be looking at. Okay, it is attached to a severed arm, and he's surprised by that, and he's going to fall back. He's still sitting there. There's like a pause around that eclipse period and up to that 1. Falls back, and he sees a dead body, and at this point, we get the U-turn. And we're going to get Clay in panic mode as well. And we have Archie saying, just imagine, it's all dark out there. He's really, his story is getting more intense as well to frighten her. He accelerates from 65 to 73, possible reference to June 5th to July 3rd, so spring to summer. And he looks down, he sees all the debris from a plane crash. George does. Okay, your little bedside lamp is glowing. Oh crap. And here we have the, what he's horrified of, which is what? False information. He would be scared by or frightened by lies. Okay? He could just follow you right up and all of that. He's really panicking now, and it's hitting him, and he's yelling, and she gets scared. He says, ah! And she jumps, hits her head, and she says, that's not funny, Archie, really hurt. But the eerie music stopped. It ended. Okay, the intense part has ended. This chaotic, increasingly intense and frightening scene that puts people on the edge of their seats was all about false stories. Okay? Dude, calm down. It was just a joke. You see? It's just a joke. Clay was being chased by pamphlets which were false. Just nonsense. Now, the question is, what about George? And I'll explain what I think what's going on with George as well in just a second. Okay? Why would he know anything about deer? She's talking to deer. It was really weird. Let me see. Not a deer. Okay, yeah. He says, ask Mom and Dad. She says, it wouldn't, they would care. He says, yeah, probably nobody. It's probably true. Nobody cares what you say. Pretty harsh. So now we go back to George. Now, after everything has calmed down, we have a completely silent scene. We don't have that eerie music anymore. And it's almost silent. You can hear the plane approaching. Here comes a plane to crash. And the plane is going to hit right there. Say, crashes into the sea, and a wave comes up to take out the house again. Okay? Now, what's going on here? It's not plausible at all that two planes would crash at the exact same point. Okay? I think what we're getting is some kind of, from the other scenes, I think from Archie and Rose, and from Clay, and also here with George, I think we might be getting the impression that what we're looking at that time is sort of a preview of what's going to happen once you think everything is calm. Like once things finally calm down again, then all that stuff we were afraid of before from just propaganda and maybe lesser events becomes a bigger thing. But what we do end up with is a plane crash here that causes major disturbance, kills people, and is evidence that things are going to get very bad soon for George. And it's interesting here because other films also focus on plane crashes. Donnie Darko, plane crash at the end of the Tangent universe. Knowing the last big event before the end of the world, 3 days or whatever before the end of the world, we have a plane crashes through power lines, probably causing a blackout, at least in some part of the area, coming down and crashing. And that was from the movie Knowing. One of the last things to let you know we're getting close is that plane crash, Plymouth Air, Plymouth sort of symbolizing religious freedom, early colonies, and all of that. White noise, remembering Babette's words when he's in the room with Mr. Gray. He says, I could not distinguish words from things. If someone said falling plane, I'd fall to the floor and take cover. That's what Babette would say, or in his memory. And Jack says to Mr. Gray, because Mr. Gray was taking the same drugs, falling plane. And Mr. Gray goes into full panic. Plunging aircraft, hailing bullets, fuselage. And it's all just words. They couldn't distinguish words from things about the plane, and they became terrified over something that either wasn't real or wasn't nearly as big of an event as it was being made out to be. And so he falls to the floor, becomes terrified. Okay, and so I don't think in this context that it's coincidental that we're getting all of these similar stories. So we may actually have a real plane incident, or maybe it's looking to the fear people have of a plane incident in terrorism or something, and it's going to be made a big deal again. Well, anyways. Okay, so if we look at the sequence and try to organize it, if we had this as the April 8th eclipse, and this is one after, perhaps this is referring to the dialar B458. Remember the before 58, I said before 58, before May 8th, but also the B is 2, so it's like 2458. Well, if you look, here's the Donnie Darko medicine bottle. In the numbers, we have a 2485. You know, dates can switch. 2845 has 6 after it and a 45 before us, so maybe it's a stretch. On the get out bingo, you have a B485. There it is, B458, B485, 2485, B458. One possibility is after the eclipse you have before a month later, May 8th, you have something big happens, or this drama that's being foreshadowed here is, predicted here perhaps, starts to take off. I'm not sure. I don't want to read into that too much. Just a possibility. I'm not sure. All I know, though, is at the end of the film, in Leave the World Behind, we have George and Ruth say, George is going to go out, help Clay, and Ruth is like, don't leave, you may never come back. He says, 1 hour. I'll be back in 1 hour. Set your phone, I'll set my phone. I'll be back in 1 hour before the alarm goes off. And both of them are apart when the alarm goes off, which is a hint that they're never getting back together again. She was right. It ends. It's going to be in an hour, like very, very fast once it gets to this point. Okay. Okay, so it could also point to this less than an hour, right? Almost an hour. Okay, there he gets the death. Here we get the misinfo. Then we get the accelerating fear-mongering, possibly from June 5th to July 3rd. So early summer, late spring. So we start April 8th. Then by the time a month passes, maybe something big happens, or maybe the propaganda starts to be ramped up significantly, even if nothing is happening. And then you get to late June or late spring, early July. The fear-mongering is very intense. People are like terrified. Whatever it is, it's being propped up, making people make bad decisions. They're afraid of paper falling on them with bad info. And then finally, sometime after that, July, things calm down. Dude, calm down. It was just a joke. Then, probably at the election or after the election, what really happens takes off. Okay? Because after it calms down, whatever that scenario is that happens in the spring to summer, to turn into less than everybody was afraid it would be, well, it actually happens, and a huge wave comes in and takes out the upper deck of the boat, if you think of it that way, takes over the ship, occupied by the white people, I guess. Again, all metaphor. But, and that's that. Okay, that's when it really happens. All right, so let's keep going, try to get to the end of the section. While all that's happening, Amanda and Ruth are at the pool, and they have a little conversation. She doesn't want to get in the pool. It seems like a hassle. The kids may have peed in the pool, and she's like, they wouldn't do that. She has all her tattoos here. The only one that I've made out that seems important is the 96. You can look closer if you want to zoom in. They wouldn't do that, and yet we really can't know, can we, if they peed in the pool. And she says, does your daughter watch Friends? Does she like that show? Well, watch is too weak a word, more like worships. What is there a problem? No, don't get me wrong, I watched it too, but it's almost nostalgic for a time that never existed, And she says, I hope the kids didn't wander too far. But it seems like they started to make a little connection. Yeah, maybe. So again, nostalgic for a time that never existed. And so again, what's giving Rose this hope and everything, optimism, or the thing that she's looking forward to, is not even reality. She's not looking forward to something that ever existed. Okay. Now let's go out to the woods one more time. He saw that Archie here is pulling a tick off his leg. He's annoyed by that. And she says, Archie, look. And here's the deer in front of the house with the bunker. And Archie's taking selfies and ignoring her. And she says, will you please look? And he says, what? By that time, the deer had run off. We should go up there. See, she's trying to follow the deer. And that's where she's going to end up being saved. Okay? No, screw that. I'm hungry. Come on, let's go. And you hear the geese because the migration patterns are messed up. Rose, let's go. So, you're going to tell us why you're soaking wet. I fell into the pool. Not true. You fell into the pool. I tripped over something. Yeah, I fell into the pool. What were you doing near the pool? I thought you were looking for Rich. Do you mind going to my study to get me something to wear? I'm afraid this is the only change of clothes I had downstairs. And when she leaves, he says to Amanda, I saw it, you know. A while ago, before all this happened, here's the curve, right? He's going to look at the markets, and he says, you know, and the satellites are down. They've been attacked. This is not just two Filipino kids making a mistake. This is bigger. Okay? He saw planes nosedive out of the sky into the ocean. It wasn't the first. So the markets, evidence of satellites failing, these are the markers of what's going to come when? Immediately after the rumbling. What's that? Distant explosion. What? Explosions continue rumbling. You hear war. And then the noise. She goes, where are my kids? And then the noise. Breaks the glass. See the pain that they're in. Everybody's in agony as the noise, which is a part of the attack, and we'll learn more about that when we talk about Danny. Danny is the guy with the cowboy hat. It's the Kevin Bacon character. It's interesting because I think he represents the states seceding, in Texas perhaps being the first, because he's got his Dallas cowboy hat on, a Lone Star hat. Sometimes George says he wears a cowboy hat, and he was friends with the people who represent the presidents. He was friends with George at one point, okay, GH. But after the problems, what does he say? He says things aren't like they used to be. Okay, and he pulls a gun on him. And so you have a separation there, a division that used to be friends, now they're not. This is the Civil War being represented. And well, anyways, he explains that the noise seems to be something like what happened in Cuba, where you have the Havana syndrome, which we'll talk about in an upcoming video, okay? And so the next part will be the noise. And that's where we're going to stop now. We're about halfway through the movie. Like, subscribe, share. Thanks, and let me know what you think. Take care. Blessings.